Navy lieutenant and a company commander, I trained my men not knowing what we were training for, paying the greatest attention to their achievement in precision bombing. When I think of the hard training of the torpedo planes that flew every day over Kagoshima City, almost touching the rooftops and having the practice for dropping torpedoes at low altitude, I must conclude that our higher command headquarters had already begun to plan the raid for Pearl Harbor.
December 6, 1941. Armed with intelligence reports, President Roosevelt is convinced the Japanese fleet is headed for Thailand. He sends a final peace appeal to Emperor Hirohito. No response is received.
Well, I felt in my bones something was about to happen. It seemed inevitable. So the move to Pearl Harbor wasn't at all surprising or emotional. There was no, let's give the youngest a taste of what they've got coming. None of that. Just, well, I guess this is finally starting.
Island of Oahu, 6 a.m. Central Pacific Time. It's a typical Sunday morning in the Hawaiian Islands. U.S. sailors are at ease.
I remember very well what I was doing. It was my first day aboard. It was a beautiful sunny day. I was up and had breakfast, first one in the wardroom. Then I was up on deck admiring the scenery and was pretty happy.
To the north, 6 Japanese aircraft carriers take position 130 miles off Oahu.
When the order came down, we had been training for 6 months for this inevitability, and we were ready to go. We were confident that we would be able to perform to the maximum extent of our military capability.
183 Japanese fighters and torpedo planes take flight. At 7 a.m., the U.S. radar station picks up the incoming Japanese planes, but this is dismissed as the scheduled arrival of U.S. B-17 bombers.
We went inside to eat, and about the time I got inside to get a chance to eat something, I heard a loud explosion. And I thought, who thinks is that?
Now, it was not unusual to hear gunfire on Sunday morning because the island was building up gun sites around the island, and they tested them every morning.
7:55 a.m. Japan's first planes reach.
Welcome to the chat. Anyone who wants to chat about World War II or Pearl Harbor? It's the 79th year after Pearl Harbor. Feel free to chat.
We're under attack. The Japanese are attacking us. No. It's those dang Marines. Now, a few weeks before, we were out at sea and the Marines were diving on us, making believe we were the enemy ship. So I wanted to believe that it was Marines.
The U.S. Pacific Fleet has no idea what's in store for them.
Our first one that came close was flying so low that you could see the color of his eyes.
They had these helmets on and their goggles were up on their heads, and he had this, looked like a scarf around his head.
And I could see the black goggles and the oriental face. That's all. And I said, my God, we are under attack.
And then somebody said, look up there, right above the harbor, and way up high, there's maybe about 15, 20,000 feet. Here they come a roll of planes.
It's the first wave of the Japanese surprise attack.
Then at the same time, comes another squadron, maybe 50 feet above the water.
Their primary targets are the U.S. airfields and the battleships in the harbor.
You went into a dive, straight down. I never saw a swing dive like that. All of a sudden, he straight down, right above the water. And he dropped the torpedo. It was a huge splash and an explosion and a lot of food rise up right back, took the two people back down. And then it hit the Japanese attack.
That means war. What's war going to be like?
As U.S. forces attempt to gather themselves in reaction to the attack, Japan unleashes utter hell.
There's not the war decision. They had enough fuel for an hour or two, and then they flew around shooting anything.
Japanese fighters and dive bombers descend on the airfield in the center of the harbor. 33 U.S. planes are destroyed on the ground.
I ran back toward the hatch door to pull the down on the lock. About the time I got the pull, which I never did, a bomb dropped between us and the vessel. And it blew me inside the hatch. Of course, you know, that's sort of a wildfire. And of course, the Japanese were then machine gunning decks, spraying the decks with machine gun fire.
All hell broke loose. They started bombing and I heard explosions and smoke and fire going in the air. Looking up in the air, there were so many airplanes peeled off right out of the, diving on the ships and dropping their torpedoes. And after they made their bombing run, they would fly over our gun positions. We didn't have any guns.
As the crew of the USS Oklahoma scrambled to man the anti-aircraft guns, Japanese torpedo planes swooped low to the water, releasing their deadly payload. 3 torpedoes strike the battleship, capsizing it and trapping hundreds of men in its hull.
We got out of the way there, and then I headed for the Oklahoma. But where was the Oklahoma? It was here a minute ago. All of a sudden, I realized the Oklahoma capsized. Here it is. All we see is this big hull. Boy, I felt like somebody kicked me in the stomach because that's our sister ship, and a lot of sister ships with the Oklahoma. And here she is capsized. You just don't kill a battleship that way.
So I have a historical thought. Has the world been mostly stable after World War II? The borders, mostly more or less around the world.
So you know that you're started.
But what's the world before World War II?
And no enormous explosion occurred.
So I have this other thought. If you look at all of human history that we can gather,
The ship jumped 20 feet out of the water.
what do we know of that has, I guess in recent, I don't know, what do we know of that has been the longest period of time on the planet with stable borders? Or relatively stable borders?
And he was from Greenfield, Ohio. I never forgot that. I seriously, I got him. But he was on fire. I got the fire out.
Almost 1,000 of the Arizona's crew are killed instantly.
We started picking up survivors. They were sliding down off the Oklahoma and so forth. We had so many, we had them hanging on the gunwale.
No matter how attentive you are when you receive bodies scattered around, that occupies your attention. Walking around, looking at the name tags and trying to memorize them with the idea of writing and telling them what happened to the son on that morning.
Those things so much wounded, and some of them during the night and used the trinkets they had on them so they would die, you know, they didn't want to live with whatever wound they received.
Washington, D.C., 11:50 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt is eating lunch in the Oval Office. He receives the message, air raid on Pearl Harbor. This is not a drill. Roosevelt is in shock.
It shouldn't have been a surprise to anyone that Japan was going to attack. Yet United States expected that they would get a declaration of war first, and the Japanese submitted something like that. But because the Japanese embassy staff were not really privy to the kind of conversations the Japanese military were having, they didn't understand that this was a declaration of war and that was that important, and that the timing had to be exactly right. Instead, they dithered about it. They took too much long to translate it, and the message wasn't delivered in time.
But the devastation isn't over just yet.
Right now, gold's at an all-time high. The bad news is really hard to get to. 3, 2, 1.
New 589 on Discovery.
Everybody's hurt, but liquor sales are through the roof. Moonshine's made for times like that. Hard times call for strong spirits.
To support a strong immune system, your body needs routine. Centrum helps your immune defenses every day with vitamin C, D, and zinc. Season after season. Ace your immune support with Centrum.
This year, Christmas might be extra uncomfy. But if there's anyone who can put the year back on a nice list, it's Tulu. Salvage this season with Yuletide tested gear.
Hey there, Carl. How's it going? Carl Angelo Clemeno, welcome. It's a commercial now, but I'm watching a Pearl Harbor show on AHC channel.
I'm Norm.
I'm sad.
And we live in Columbia.
Are you a World War II buff? Oh, I guess he left. Guess he doesn't want to chat about the topic.
We both been taking Prevagen for a little more than 11 years now. After about 30 days of taking it, we noticed clarity. And then we didn't.
Well, it's still showing. The app is still showing him as a participant,
Healthier brain, better life.
but the people counter up here went down to 1 again, which I think is just, I don't know why it says 1. It has both me and him as a participant. Maybe it keeps the list of everyone who participated ever in the participants section.
Only pay for what you need.
Sick of annoying spam calls? RoboKiller eliminates 99% of unwanted calls, so you can live your life spam call free. Download RoboKiller today.
Introducing Pegasus, a next generation all-in-one work table and clamping system. Pegasus holds tight and in the end. Steel reinforcement makes Pegasus super strong. A workspace, any place. Works Pegasus.
Sleep soundly tonight from the brand that more families trust for quality and timeless protection. ABT.
This holiday, these cookie craftsmen find out.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
One of the best we've seen.
Wow.
How about cookie? Crumbles. All new Christmas Cookie Challenge. Tonight at 10. On Food Network. Set your TV on. Love adventure.
Love something wild? Discovery Plus, spectacular. Stream what you love.
Oahu, 8:54 a.m. A second wave of 167 Japanese planes descend on Pearl Harbor.
I was in the second wave, so I had some time after the operation started and before it was my time to go. I figured that the first wave must have already arrived by now, but I still couldn't see what. And then, just then, from under the cloud bank, I finally saw something glittering white that I knew had to be the Hanoi coastline and the airbase at Fort Island. My mission in the second wave was to attack aircraft carrier and suppress the American emergency response and the counterattack. But the carriers I was supposed to bomb weren't there. And since there were no carriers, we were re-attacking the battleships that the first wave had already hit.
In fact, U.S. aircraft carriers are on maneuver for 100 miles away. But at Pearl Harbor, the casualty count rises by the minute as the massive scale of destruction becomes clearer. American servicemen desperately try to contain the blazing fires.
Everything above the water line is on fire. Now, since gunnery is my specialty, I have one of the ready ammunition, that always kept the ready ammunition top side. And I knew that if the fire knocked those ammunition lockers, we're going to have other explosions. So I got a hose and tried to cool the ammunition lockers so they would go on.
Finally, the U.S. responds. They scramble fighter aircraft to intercept Japan's planes and man anti-aircraft guns on the ground.
And this kid, one jumped up on the right one, and two others jumped up with him, and then the other three jumped up on him, and he started firing. And because his dipole started coming down, I seen the one dipole come down on that ship, and he burst in the flame. One big ball of fire. And then another come down, the same way, same time, he got. Within 20 seconds, those two flames, they got the huge Chinese flame. That's quick.
The Americans shoot down a total of 29 Japanese planes.
I saw three men fall to their deaths with misery in their face. And I can never forget it. I realized that on the front line of war, nobody wins. The one who's shot down may seem the loser, and the shooter may seem the victor, but they're the same. I will have to bear this horrible feeling for the rest of my life.
Although the Japanese are keen to send a third wave of attacks, they realize that U.S. defenses are now mobilizing. 10:30 a.m. Only hours after it began, the assault on Pearl Harbor is over. The U.S. Pacific Fleet has been decimated, and 2,403 people have been killed.
There have been many explanations why the American fleet was not prepared for the Japanese attack at Pearl Harbor, and I think mainly it's just they just didn't expect the Japanese to be capable of doing it. For the Japanese, of course, it was a huge risk because it was a big fleet steaming there. If they'd been detected at the wrong moment, of course, the Americans would have been a formidable adversary. So they made desperate efforts, radio silence, everything, to make sure that they could arrive in striking distance without being observed. And they achieved that to a remarkable degree.
While they may have had a successful raid, Japan failed to destroy America's aircraft carriers.
Much of the attack on Pearl Harbor is, if you will, a kind of casualty of the war in China itself. It may superficially seem crazy for Japan to attack the United States, but in fact it was part of a coordinated plan that if they were able to destroy the carrier fleet, it would give Japan enough time to gather its resources and fight a war of attrition across the Pacific. And then they hope they can negotiate some kind of end to the war that helps them preserve their empire. But obviously, in missing the carrier fleet, that plan doesn't come to fruition.
The Navy lost the battleship Arizona, the old target ship Utah, 3 destroyers, the Cassin, the Downs, and the Shaw. And the Navy sustained damage to other vessels. The entire balance of the Pacific Fleet, with its battleships, aircraft carriers, heavy cruisers, light cruisers, destroyers and submarines are uninjured and all are at sea seeking contact with the enemy. The Japs started this war. We are going to finish it.
We have record high gold prices. You don't strike it rich now, you never will. Gold Rush, the richest season yet. Friday at 8 on Discovery.
Right now, gold's at an all-time high. Bad news is really hard to get. 3, 2, 1.
Gold Rush Network, new Friday at 9 on Discovery. Say you're looking for the perfect present. You might try looking at the perfect place. A place with gifts that light up a face as well as a room. Where it's easy to find the brands they'll love and the advice you trust. That place isn't a warehouse. That place is your local Ace. Around the block, where you need in stock with people who know their gifts. Your local Ace has great gifts. Pick up curbside or we'll deliver them right to your door. Ace is the place with the hardcore rock band.
We don't have that music. Everybody be lost.
If you want me to stay, I'll be around today. Be difficult to see. I'll be so good. I'll be so good. Get the message off to you now.
America's stages need our help.
For each stream of this song, Crown Royal will donate to these cultural entities.
Let's make sure they stay.
Okay, so I'm at 50% Maya. I thought I was managing my mother to severe Crohn's disease until I realized something was missing. My symptoms were keeping me from really being there for my sisters. So I talked to my doctor and learned Humira is for people who still have symptoms of Crohn's disease after trying other medications. The majority of people on Humira saw significant symptom relief in as little as 4 weeks, and many achieved remission that can last. Humira can lower your ability to fight infections. Serious and sometimes fatal infections, including tuberculosis and cancers, including lymphoma, have happened, as have blood, liver, and nervous system problems, serious allergic reactions, and new or worsening heart failure. Tell your doctor if you've been to areas where certain fungal infections are common, and if you've had TB, hepatitis B, or protein infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Don't start Humira if you have an infection. Be there for you. Amen. Ask your gastroenterologist about Humira. With Humira, remission is possible.
Everybody's hurt, but liquor sales are pretty good. Moonshine's made for times like that. Hard times cost a strong spirit.
Being a patient with diabetes myself, I can say without question that the Dexcom system is the most powerful tool to help navigate diabetes better on a daily basis.
I love it. I just wear a little sensor and that's it. It's totally painless and private.
The Dexcom sends my glucose readings to my receiver every 5 minutes. I just pull it out of my pocket and look, and I don't have to prick my finger.
Dexcom puts you in control, not your diabetes.
See yourself
Welcome back with an
and know you're not alone, because this is not just a mirror. It's an unstoppable community.
Come on, Jackie. One more.
It's a race across time zones.
Come on, you two. Let's go.
A gift for the whole family. So join in now and see your best self in the mirror.
This holiday, who's Cookie Craftsman find out?
I'm on the SMSC.
One of the best we've seen.
Wow.
How about cooking? Crumbles. All new Christmas Cookie Challenge tonight at 10 on Food Network. Set your TV on. Love adventure? Love something wild? Discovery Plus, spectacular. Stream what you love.
News of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor shocked the world.
Undeclared war on the United States. The crime of the century. Death and destruction as gratitude for years of peace and helpful friendship. Murder of the innocent. An attack that aroused all American nations to the menace of Axis world domination.
The news of the attack on Pearl Harbor was greeted with astonishment throughout the world. It's immediately labeled by Roosevelt as the day of infamy. Churchill famously says that on the evening when he hears the news, he sleeps soundly. And by this, of course, he doesn't mean anything sinister or unpleasant. He just realizes that the magnitude of this attack means that America will now be in the war, and that, in his mind at least, Britain now cannot lose the war.
Out of a clear sky came the treacherous Japanese attack on Hawaii. The homes of Waikiki, famous in song, are burning fiercely from the bombs dropped by those players.
The next day, on December 8, 1941, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed the Declaration of War against Japan.
I believe that I interpret the will of the Congress and of the people when I assert that we will not only defend ourselves to the uttermost, but will make it very certain that this form of treachery shall never again endanger us. I ask the Congress to declare a state of war between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
In Tokyo, the attack on Pearl Harbor is reported as a great success. In the eyes of the Japanese, their mighty empire has struck a killer blow and showed the world that they are a force to be reckoned with.
People in Japan who had been really desperate for some kind of blitzkrieg style attack that was resolve its wars in China, see the use of this kind of technological power against the United States and a successful use of that power as an enormous morale booster. So you see public support for a war against the United States and the Western powers more broadly, including Britain, beginning to surge.
When war with the United States finally came, I think Japanese public opinion was slightly divided. I think there were certainly many Japanese who thought that Japan had now bitten off much more than it could chew. There were others who thought, well, the Americans have been our enemy now for years. They've been trying to hedge Japan in. This is another example of white man power. Despite the risks involved, I think for a great many Japanese, this simply war had to be waged.
With the state of war declared, Japanese nationals living in the U.S. and Hawaii are taken captive.
First couple of days they rounded up a lot of them. Whatever they've done with them, I don't know. What else could you think, they're as good as anybody else? Because how could they be when they attacked us like they did? In this case, the innocent had to suffer from that.
The United States immediately begins mobilizing for all-out war in the Pacific.
So many Americans wanted to join the American Naval Army to get back at Japan. And very soon the United States had the largest carrier force and the largest number of naval aircraft in the world.
The United States, there was a sense of deep shock that the Japanese had attacked them so successfully. However, if you do read through the diaries of American military officers, while they're shocked, they're also confident of building the war. Because I think at the end of the day, the United States did have a better military than Japan.
We are now in this war. We're all in it. Every single man, woman, child. The partner, the most tremendous undertaking of our American history.
7:55 a.m., December the 7th. That minute will go down in history as the beginning of the end of the Jacks. I know it, because they started something we're going to finish. Your brother Bill was a soldier. Your Uncle Pete was a Marine. Your cousin in the Coast Guard. Your dad and mom buying war bottles. Your kid sister busy with war work. All of us together. We're going to carry it right back to them in Tokyo and let them have it. Come on, men, join the fight. Your Navy needs you.
The attack on Pearl Harbor is only part of Japan's strategy of aggression. They simultaneously invade the Philippines, forcing the U.S. off the islands. Japanese troops also descend on Malaya and Hong Kong. But all of these operations are just the beginning. The first offensive in a war that will consume Southeast Asia and the Pacific in a brutal, unrelenting fight for years to come.
Japanese General